We at REBA released the sixth in our Transforming Engagement series in May 2023. We are producing this series in association with Mercer Marsh Benefits. And in this particular report, we explore how the employee value proposition, the EVP, is evolving due to the business transformation that we're seeing in our world today. And I'd just like to point out that if you'd like a copy of the full report packed with data and insight, you will find a link to the report at the end of this video. Now, to discuss transformation in this context, I'm joined today by Nick McMenemy, who is Digital Strategy and Market Leader at Mercer Marsh Benefits. And we're going to chat about how changing ways of working and skills shortages are shifting employee expectations and what this means for the future and evolving EVP. If while watching this video, you'd like to jump ahead to a specific part of our discussion, you can see the chapters now on screen, or you can look at the video timeline below to access that particular section of our discussion. Now, Nick, in this research, it was noteworthy that relatively few organizations expect to see a change in the pace of the crises that we've been facing, the inflation rises or business transformation, which means we are having to live with rapid, constant change. So I'd like to start off by asking you, what are the main drivers of change that are transforming organizations and their workforces?
Hi, Debbie. Yeah, it's a really good point. And if I think back to my 25-year career in this industry, I can't remember a period of change as much as particularly the last 5 to 10 years. So off the back of the financial crisis, straight into a global pandemic, then with political and kind of uncertainty around the geopolitical situation, the war in Ukraine, and then straight into an economic, a cost of living crisis. It's been unprecedented. There doesn't seem to have been a normal day for about 5 years. And I just thought I'd give a very quick canter through some of the stuff that we see employers facing at the moment that's kind of impacting their employee experience. So if we think about, politically, potential change of government, certainly some turmoil in the current UK government, but also some political moves towards things like net zero, environmental challenges, also challenges in our healthcare system with the NHS company post COVID. If you think about the economic situation, interest rates going up, inflation stubbornly high, stagnant economic growth, if not quite into recession just yet, and this kind of massive cost of living impact on employees as well. If we look socially, things like climate change, diversity and inclusion, post-COVID work-life balance, and how employees and employers are negotiating that, and then also kind of the transparency around remuneration that is, I think, quite a new thing. And perhaps, when my generation, we were more secretive about kind of what we earn and what we expected. That's not really a thing anymore. And then finally, if we look at some of the technological transformation that's coming along around the digitization of workforces, AI, ChatGPT, and workforce transformation, I don't envy employers at the moment in trying to navigate all that and trying to keep their employees safe and happy and engaged.
So picking up on that exact point in terms of them navigating all of this, what does all this change mean for how employers think about their people and their benefit strategies?
Yeah, it's again a really good question. I think for me, a lot of it is around agility and flexibility in terms of how they design their employee value proposition and the benefits that sit within that. So I would still expect employers to have core values that they hang everything off. And I'm not sure that they need to change that frequently. But what should change is responding to employees' needs and expectations in terms of the design and the delivery of those benefits and the benefits that are chosen at a particular time. So, for example, benefits that were designed to support employees during COVID might now pivot to benefits that support cost of living, for example.
So, yeah, I want to come on to that thing about what people are looking at immediately short term, but also longer term, because the research shows that engagement, skills development, and company culture are high on employees' priority lists. And what our employer respondents believe is that these will become more significant in the future as employees look beyond these short-term current crises and start to look towards the longer-term targets, such as their personal development and career progression. So how are you and your team at Mercer Marsh Benefits seeing the demands of employees, and in particular candidates for jobs, causing employers to shift their EVP?
Yeah, it's fascinating to watch. So what we're seeing is that employers are, with all good intentions, struggling to keep up with employee expectations. So there's a disconnect between what employees expect and would like to see versus employers' capability to deliver that within the right time frame. So we work really hard with our clients to help them do employee listening exercises, focus groups, and surveys to understand what employees are expecting to see. What we're also seeing is a shift to potential employees and current employees asking about, well, what does my company stand for? What are the values? What's the purpose? Why do we get up in the morning? What kind of culture do we offer? Do we support each other as colleagues? Do we support each other in times of difficulty? Many organizations worked really hard to support their employees during the pandemic, and I think those that did so successfully will have been rewarded in terms of employee loyalty and retention. So it's been really interesting. There is definitely a shift towards how much are you going to pay me for this job versus what does this job mean to me, and how am I going to feel when I come to work.
So lots of change around the EVP, and shifting an EVP as an employer isn't a quick task. So how do you keep it fluid enough to adapt to all these different emerging needs, but without it losing focus?
Great question, and not always an easy thing to navigate. And it comes back to, I think, having really solid foundations in terms of what the EVP is rooted in. So, what are the company values? What's the company saying to its employees about how they'll treat them, how they'll inspire them, motivate them, engage them, and keep them focused on on the job. From that, you can then make changes to some of the more tactical parts of the employee value proposition. So, the place of work, how the difference between working from home and working in an office, the type of job design that can be offered, the type of benefits that can be offered to support either generational needs or work-life balance needs, whatever that might be, that individuals might want. So, for example, do certain parts of the colleague population need support with menopause or fertility? Do neurodiverse colleagues need adaptations to job design and the way that they're expected to kind of show up at work? So it's absolutely fascinating, and again, it's not always easy for employers to navigate. But I think, just reiterating the point I made at the start, if the EVP is rooted in really solid core values, then changes can be made to some of the tactical parts of the EVP that can ebb and flow over time.
Now, in our survey among employers, what we found was that health and well-being benefits, including financial well-being, have really become a core component of most employers' EVPs, along with aspects of company culture and support for wider well-being. So, Nick, when you're looking across the market, what does the new EVP, or perhaps CVP, and you can perhaps explain what I mean by CVP, mean for benefits design? What is changing?
Yeah, so CVP is an interesting one, and let's be honest. With the last time we spoke, Debbie, that's kind of a phrase that we came up with. So basically, CVP stands for culture, values, and purpose, and I've touched on that in some of my previous responses, and it has become so important to employees in the current environment. we're definitely seeing changes to more personalization of benefits. So instead of a one size fits all, just because you're age 25 or 45 or 65, actually it's almost down to what the individual's needs are at a particular time. So that presents a challenge to employers. Obviously, you can't offer 250 benefits just because one person might take it up at any one time. However, there's definitely a recognition that there are certain cohorts of employees that require different things. So I mentioned, for example, women's health at work. So, support around fertility and menopause and periods. You could look at specific needs of, for example, LGBT colleagues or colleagues that are ethnically and racially diverse. So we know that in both those groups, for example, they are more prevalent. They have a greater prevalence to needing support around mental health. We also know from research that they are more likely to take up digital or remote benefits and remote support rather than face-to-face, and that might be to do with retaining anonymity or sensitivity around some of the characteristics that they exhibit. So it's about an employer knowing their employees, knowing what their expectations and their needs are, knowing how they're likely to access benefits at a certain time. So again, for me as a benefits consultant, that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years. It's just a fascinating environment to be working in right now. And the research that REBA does, and that we're delighted to partner on, is it gives employers such a great starting point and data that they can hang their strategy off.
So picking up on that point and looking at the research as well, what are some of the new benefits, or perhaps some of the old benefits that are being revived? You've mentioned a few, but I think there's some others that are shifting in the marketplace. It'd be interesting to hear what your views are.
We're seeing definitely acceleration on anything that supports cost of living. So whether that's access to discounted home heating bills, whether it's mortgage advice that enables people to get better deals on their mortgage or understand their affordability, whether it's climate and sustainability related benefits like electric cars, electric bikes, assistance with more sustainable modes of transport in terms of commuting, whether it's assistance around health and safety in the workplace, because more and more people are spending more time working from home. So there's a bunch of specific benefits that are responding to the kind of the current changes in work-life balance and working patterns that we're seeing, definitely.
Right, thank you, Nick. And that's just a small tip of the iceberg of all the data that we've got in this new report that's just come out. So thank you very much for joining me today to just explore some of those shifts that we're seeing in the EVP and pick through some of the why behind the data in our sixth report in our Transforming Engagement series. And just to remind anybody watching the video, if they'd like a copy of the reports, the Evolving EVP Meeting Business and Workforce Change, we have included a link at the end of this video. But for now, Nick, thank you very much.
Pleasure, Debbie. Thank you.